May I have your attention, please? Can you keep it down for a sec, please? First of all, I would like to thank you very much for giving this lecture. I learned something. I picked up something new, and I also wanted to be the first one, if that's okay with you guys, to ask a question. My question is, I actually studied with BNS Iyengar in the Jagan Mohan Palace in Mysore, where your grandfather used to teach. And something that you cannot get a straight answer on this question, but I also don't know how to explain my students this. The question is as follows. As you just yourself said, both Patabi Joyce, so let's say that kind of series practice comes from Krishnamacharya, as also Mr. Iyengar studied as a young child with your grandfather. What I don't understand is that in Mysore, the capital city of Ashtanga Yoga these days, Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga, how the series is also, the 8 series of Ashtanga Yoga, how they are always attributed to Krishnamacharya. Well, I look at your lecture, but also if I look at like what is available on the teaching of Krishnamacharya, I don't understand how he would have ever constructed 8 series and have left it with that, and that is for a general audience to practice, because obviously everybody, young, old, we all, for the people who practice the series of Ashtanga Vinyasa, we all practice the same thing. I was wondering if you could explain me how I could explain my students that, how that is coming from Krishnamacharya. You understand?
Yes, I understand your question, but I don't know if you will like the answer I'm going to give. Let's go back historically a bit as well and look at the situation. Well, in the early 1930s, a lot of young boys and girls were studying with Krishnamacharya in the Yoga Shala, and they were taught in this kind of a manner, where they were taught in this kind of a sequence. And as I explained to you, somewhere in the early 1930s, an incident happened, which was that there was a trip that Krishnamacharya was asked to make by the king of Mysore to go to lecture in a place called Pune, which is in towards the northwest of India, a little far away from Mysore by train, which was the only thing that was available in those days. Now, Krishnamacharya was meant to take one of his students at this time, who was called Keshava Murthy. In fact, you can even say that perhaps Keshava Murthy was one of the favorite students of Krishnamacharya in this time in the Mysore palace. Some of the pictures of the student is available in the book called Yoga Makaranda, where he is doing some very complicated postures. However, before the travel, what happened was that Keshava Murthy became sick. He became very ill, and it's unfortunate that I think when Krishnamacharya went to the trip with another student, I think Keshava Murthy even passed away very young, as a young boy. So because Keshava Murthy became very sick before the trip or whatever, Krishnamacharya had to take another student. So he took B.K. Iyengar in this trip, and B.K. Iyengar, that's how, went with him to Pune. And when the event in Pune, it was quite successful, that there was a lot of interest that people had in yoga and the way in which Krishnamacharya was teaching. So they asked him if he could stay, or he could send somebody to stay and teach the people there. Krishnamacharya said, well, I can't stay because we have there is a school to run, and there is family to run and all this, and well, but you can keep B.K. Sengar, my student, who will teach you. Because B.K. Sengar at that time was a young boy of, I think, 18 or so, and he was about to begin his career as an adult, as a young boy. So he said, okay, you stay here. That's how B.K. Sengar ended up in Pune. He never returned after this. However, there was what happened, if you look at it historically, B.K. Sengar stayed there, and I don't know if you can imagine the distance, say from Pune to Mysore is something like from Sweden to Turkey or something like that by train. And in those days it was not so easy to travel. There was no internet and Twitter and Facebook to keep in contact. There was not even a telephone. A letter would probably take 5 months to go one way and 5 months to come back another way. So what happened also was that there was a communication gap that started to happen because of circumstances, because these two people were living in two different places. So somebody like B.K. Sengar could not have regular classes anymore just because they was in another town. B.K. Sengar started to evolve his work in a very interesting way, because he could not teach the same way he had learned to the people who were coming, because the man who was patronizing B.K. Sengar was a medical doctor called Dr. Gokhale. And his way of supporting B.K. Sengar was, he was sending a lot of his sick patients to B.K. Sengar. Because this is exactly the topic of lecture, or this is what had happened when Krishnamacharya came and talked about yoga. Yoga as a therapy, and he knew that the Mysore Maharaja was taking therapeutic yoga. So this doctor started sending sick people to B.K. Sengar. Now, imagine people who are very, very sick and adults, they can do asanas in the way B.K. Sengar is doing. So B.K. Sengar had to innovate and he had to adapt. And he started to remember, I think, perhaps he was inspired by seeing all these use of props that was all there in the Mysore palace that Krishnamacharya was using for the adults at this time. So this is how he started changing his work, using props, using other things, static positions, so that he could help the adult students who were coming to him. So that's how Iyengar Yoga started to take its different turn, where things started to happen. And plus, we have to say that B.K. Sengar himself, knowing his personality, was a very particular person. So he wanted to bring everything to be correct and things. So he, through the interaction he had with Dr. Gokhale, a medical man, he started to understand how medicine looks at the body, and so he started to integrate these principles of alignment and this and that into his work. So that's how the Iyengar Yoga started to take shape.